unusual couple, you know.
Oh, I don't think that was ever in question.
Well, hello, everybody there in PJCN land. I am Maxwell Haddad. It is Saturday, February 6, 2021, and you are here for the Water Cooler Chat. We're going to be talking about episode 5 of WandaVision, and joining me today is none other than Dan and I. Our panel is going to look a little bit different today. Our usual stalwart host, PJ Campbell, is unavailable. So for today's purposes, I will be PJ and Dan will be me.
I don't know. I literally, Max threw that at me 3 seconds before we're going to go to air. And I'm like, I can't do it. I don't know how to be Max. Oh my God. And I'm panicking. So is that the kind of energy I need to be bringing today?
I'm not usually that neurotic on air.
On air, sure.
Off air, yes. But how are you doing today?
I'm good. I was just scrambling around the house trying to get everything done so I could literally do this as long as necessary and then go straight to work. So I think I'm good. I think I'm good.
We have a couple of guests joining us today. I'm going to introduce them, and then we'll go over some channel notes before diving into the episode. First, I'm really, really happy to have this guy joining us. I'm sure you know him from the Cinefanatics channel. He is the younger of the Addams twins. It's Chris.
Yes, I'm the 8-year younger twin of the two of us.
You're
almost in labor for a very long time.
Yeah. It's some of that Westview, New Jersey math.
But like the opposite. Where they're shorter, it's getting longer. So
right, exactly. Or it's like Tenet. It's going.
My poor mother.
Anyways, also joining us. I was going to say tonight, but it's smack dab in the middle of the day. Is a wonderful gentleman with a lush and luxurious beard who is Dan's frequent podcasting partner. It's Eric Muller.
Yeah, buddy.
Let's switch this. There we go. That feels
Andy's
better.
Still muted. Unmute.
Yes.
Up, sorry. We're live. This is how you can tell we're live.
Yes.
100%. Live television.
That's right.
So what t-shirt am I wearing since Peaches? I'm wearing a Nevertheless She Persisted Elizabeth Warren t-shirt. Not the normal horror garb PJ is wearing, but a cause I love and a slogan I love. My very good friend has that tattooed on her arm.
Oh, awesome.
So yes.
Love
Hello,
it.
Sean Wingblade. So look, before we dive into this, I would say exceptional episode of television. Going to go over a couple of the things we have coming up on the network over the next few days. Plugs. Yes, not hair plugs, show plugs. First of all, I want to get this plug out of the way. Just because we're so generous here at the PJCN and we also don't have our own show tonight, be sure to head over to a certain POV to watch Happy Hour with Jill and Molly tonight at 5 p.m. Pacific. We are huge fans of both Jill and Molly, and they are playing the Newlywed Game tonight. They're joined by Brandon, Hannah, and Sabrina, and then both of Jill and Molly's significant others, of course, Alex Damon and one of our best friends, Sean Sullivan, will be there, and the luxurious Abby Friel is hosting. So put all those people in a blender and alcohol, and it's sure to be just an incredible time.
Your adjectives make me really happy. The luxurious.
Again, if we were streaming tonight on PJCN, fuck POV, watch us. But because we're free, go over there, hang out, happy hour, have a good time.
Have fun.
Yeah. In all seriousness, though, that it's one of my favorite new shows in the space. That first episode was wonderful, and I'm really excited to watch tonight and see the craziness that I'm sure is going to unfold. Now, on to our network. Tomorrow, we are not doing an unwind. We forgot that there's this big sporting event thing tomorrow that hundreds of millions of people watch called the Super Bowl.
The bowl of soup, yeah.
The Superb Owl.
The
Superb Owl. I like that.
And you know what's funny, speaking about the Super Bowl, is it's in Florida, which means there's going to be fans there.
Oh, weird. I don't like that at all.
And yeah, I mean, it's outside, but I don't know.
You know what's funny? I didn't even realize the Super Bowl was happening until like Monday this week. I was like, wait, it's this weekend?
I didn't even realize
football was a thing right now.
Till yesterday when we canceled our show tomorrow night because it's the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It was one of those things. I felt like there was way more steam going in, like through the big chunk of the playoffs, and now everyone is true solid.
Solid Slate says, wouldn't be a PJCN production if a guy with a big beard didn't have mic problems. Yeah, the Super Spreader Bowl is more like it.
Hey,
all right.
I feel like there was momentum lost. It was like everyone's excited about the NFL playoffs, and then it's like, oh, cool, Brady and the Chiefs are there.
Right.
Hooray.
So Monday night, we're doing a watch along of Misery. This film was picked by our executive producer, patron, Brandy Parker. Great movie, amazing patron. Join us for that.
I love that still.
Then on Wednesday, Suddenly Soundtracks is back. Host Chris Clark is joined by Eric Barnes, Linus Babcock, and Jen Kemp as they go through the soundtrack of the Muppet movie. I really love that movie. I think that's going to be a hoot. And I don't know if I should still call him the Warfather, so I'm just not going to anymore. So it's just Eric Barnes.
Sure.
Anyways, Muppet movie on Wednesday. Then on Friday, we're doing a watch along of Big Fish. This was another patron pick by Ricardo Franco. Come and join us if you want to watch grown men cry on the internet.
And also, there's a show coming up on Thursday as well, which we're low-key keeping under wraps.
Thursday, there are going to be 2 shows. That's 2 shows on the PJ Campbell Network. One that I'm not going to say, but probably involves these 2. And Front Center Mez has a brand new episode. More on that on Monday when we reveal our key art. But you probably heard me talking about how we have these patrons who pick these movies that we're going to watch. And look, we could not do anything we do here on the Pajukin without our patrons. So I have to give a huge shout out to our executive producers, Brandy Parker, Brandon Buckingham, and Ricardo Franco, our gold producer, Sean Wingblade, and our producers, Tyler Birch, Patricia Carrillo, Anton Putra, Jake Berlin, Molly Damon, Bador, Kale the Youth Critic, Stephen White, Mike K, Chris Pokernoy, and She-Ra Potato. Thank you all so much for your continued support. You truly are the lifeblood of this network. We continue to do this because of your support.
Correct. All of the above.
Yes.
So there was a show. Transitions are a thing.
Wait, there wasn't
non-sequiturs?
Dang it. Yes, I'll have one.
Oh, then why are you here? What are you doing here? So
where do we start? What do you want to start with? This is
let's
the beginning is usually a good start.
The beginning is a good start, but I'd even suggest that let's start before the beginning. So last week in WandaVision Land in episode 4, we peeled back the layers on the sitcom and Westview and got a look at what was going on outside of this hexagonal bubble that has been created with a force field and all this fun sciencey stuff I don't pretend to understand because I am not Brandon Hanna. I know we look so similar, but
it's the glasses. It's the Superman conundrum.
Sure, right. The jawline.
Yeah, exactly. Like
the general.
Often when I'm looking at you, I picture a cape flying behind you, and him less so. So,
I'm going to take that as a compliment. So we got to see Randall Park as Agent Jimmy Woo. We got to see the return of Kat Dennings, who has got her doctorate, and I'm so happy for Darcy. I loved that character in the first 2 Thors, and of all of the MCU supporting characters, she was one I was sad to see had not returned. So of all the WandaVision things that have brought me joy, and there's a lot of them, seeing her back in a big role is a huge joy. We officially confirmed that it was Monica Rambeau. And so one of the questions that we talked about last week, and you were here for that, Eric, is going forward, how does the show split the time between the sitcom and the real world, and what sort of balance do they strike? And I think it became immediately clear that it's going to be sort of, if not 50-50, 60-40.
Pretty
a really
clean,
clean, nice balance where what we're seeing in the sitcom world is being directly
influenced
by the outside world and dealt with. So as things are happening that make us go, that we also see Jimmy and Darcy and Monica go, as
there
well.
There was that famous 90s song, things that make you go,
Mm-hmm. So the episode sort of starts with a bit of a flashback, not much of a flashback, but a bit of a flashback where I don't know if it's a flashback or not, but we finally see Monica getting out of a hospital bed after she'd been thrown.
Oh, for last week. Or no, this week. I'm sorry.
No, that's how it started.
No, this week
I thought
started. Yeah,
thought it
this
came
week
a little
started with
later,
this week started with the traditional '80s startup because that's
Oh,
where,
okay.
yeah, because they're with the twins, and then Catherine Hahn comes in, steals the show as always, and
Yes.
you
and
get
then
some weirdness immediately.
right, and then you notice the. Do you want me to do it again?
Okay, that was how it started. Okay, for some reason I thought it had another cold open, but I guess these episodes are dense. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apologies, I'll say that. So like we're gonna have a lot to go over. We're gonna touch on as many things in the episode as we can. If we jumble the order, we apologize because we're gonna hop around a lot.
see, isn't he doing such a good job at being me?
It's almost like Eric and I have done this for years, and it
What?
becomes word diarrhea.
Oh,
and
it's
just
almost
we're
like
gonna cover everything.
PJ would fuck up and then Maxwell would fix it.
Right, Maxwell for the save. Like,
Right, so
if
thank
this
you.
is a
Okay, so
baseball
I'm
team.
doing all right.
Maxwell,
Okay.
you're the closer.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
We need you
PJ's
to
the
come in.
setup man and Maxwell comes in to close.
That's right.
Yeah, so first of all, there's a lot of
Maxwell.
questions as to how much Wanda is actually controlling
oh man.
this.
Yeah.
But if we operate under the assumption that at least her interaction she has control in, I love the fact that Catherine Hahn gets audience applause every time she enters. Like Wanda
Yes.
is on point with that decision.
hmm
Because if
And
Catherine Hahn was in my life and she walked in the room,
Every time.
Oh yeah.
I would applaud every time and give her an Emmy just for being wonderful.
Just for existing, yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I like that they're using a good amount of her. Like you can very easily overdo it with a character like that. And so far there's been a nice balance, especially in Westview, to where it's like everyone's getting a lot of time. They're really spreading around the characters and the character development in this crazy sitcom world. And so
Yeah,
when you're saying like how much control she has, it's like, oh my God, that's such a layered question. And where do you go with that?
Right. So, I mean, I'm okay jumping around a little bit and instead of going like a direct like narrative recap, talking about themes. So, last week it was sort of established that Westview and what was going on was Wanda's creation. And she had a good level of control, which we saw as she expelled Monica out from it.
Mhm.
And then this week, we saw even more elements to that. And what I found particularly chilling was her breaking into S.W.O.R.D. to steal Vision's corpse.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, apparently that's supposed to be the post-credit scene to Endgame, but Kevin Feige nixed it.
Okay, good.
Interesting.
I'm glad. Did
Well,
you read?
The reason he decided against it because he's like, as much as I would love to set up WandaVision, it's Endgame needs to stand on its own. It didn't need the post-credit.
I appreciated that Endgame didn't have a post-credit scene because it really feels like the end of
Yeah.
it's a period, and then Far From Home is a new beginning.
Yes.
So I think that's a smart choice.
So,
But-
like, literally, when the director says, you're now giving permission to see this footage, we're all getting access to see
Right.
that footage for the first time, which,
Right.
little touches. You got to love it.
Yeah.
And it was really chilling footage. And Elizabeth Olsen is so good at playing the darker elements of her character. And then we also see a scene where she exits
Correct.
and confronts S.W.O.R.D. and the director, and Jimmy and Darcy sort of stand towards the back because I think Jimmy and Darcy are sort of the audience surrogates. They're the friendly, cheery, goofy, lovable.
You're
don't
R2
wanna
and
shoot-
C3PO.
Yeah. We don't want to shoot anyone. We just want to solve a mystery and make sure everyone's okay. And that's why I love them so much.
Literally,
They're
they
the-
are because Darcy's sitting there watching the show with us at the exact same time we're watching
Right.
it.
Which
So,
is
yeah.
such a clever conceit for this premise.
Which we'll get into one of my favorite things about that later on. But I love that you're tying, because those two, that's different Wanda. This is a different Wanda that we're seeing in episode 5 in those two scenes than we
Yes.
have at any other point. And they're one thing.
And
The first thing I noticed real quick, I like her breaking into S.W.O.R.D. is really interesting. But the detail that jumped right out to me was as soon as she comes out of the hex, guess what happens? Oh, her accent's back. Where'd
Yep.
that
Yeah.
come
Yep.
which
So it
we
was-
have not heard her accent in a while because after Age of Ultron, it was dropped.
Yeah.
in Civil War. I'm trying in Civil War. It might be very
Civil War
faint.
was like,
it's
very
but that's-
faint, but then
it's a la Halle Berry in
in
X-Men 2.
Infinity War and Endgame, it's not
gone.
there.
Yeah.
Which, what's interesting is, I think Elizabeth's an incredible actress, but I never felt the accent was amazing. But I think in that scene, it was the best and most consistent it's ever been. But those two scenes lead me to believe that while she does have some level of control of the sitcomness of all of it, I think there's someone else pulling
Agreed.
certain strings.
Yeah.
And I don't pretend to be a Marvel expert. Unfortunately, Dwayne couldn't be with us today, and he's our usual like deep dive Marvel expert. But we've discussed, and I know Eric is pretty legit too. So correct me if I'm wrong, but we've discussed previously how a lot of this seems influenced by the House of M comic book series, and so you have to consider that Mephisto may be the one out there pulling the strings. But the other thing to consider, and this is me bringing it back to Catherine Hahn, is I think it's a foregone conclusion that Agnes is Agatha Harkness, who is a witch. And so we start out with Agnes. Oh, speak of the devil. I literally just said, I'm sorry that our resident Marvel expert Dwayne isn't here to help me fill in some of these gaps talking about Mephisto. But there you are. You showed up.
I may or may not have been watching.
Oh, there you go.
You willed him into this.
It was like an organic bat signal where he just felt it in his soul.
It was like,
he's like, I need to be talking to him.
Yeah. I do have another show in about 40 minutes, but I did want to pop in to talk about this episode because this is like by far my favorite episode.
Well, Max,
any misgivings I had about the show, gone.
Max, quick pitch the gaps you need to be filling. Let's get maximum Dwayne while he's
well,
here.
Before we get to it, I just want to say, so when we were talking about that opening scene where Agnes looks at her and says, "Do you want me to do that again? Do you want me to take it again?" And we saw previous that Agnes definitely more so than maybe anyone else around has awareness that this is all some sort of illusion or facade. So it's all starting to come together that she's almost, I'll be shocked if she's not Agatha Harkness. And whether or not she's pulling the strings or is just there because she's a witch and is, keeping an eye on Wanda and making sure things don't get too explosive is to be seen. But let's talk about Mephisto. What can you tell us about Mephisto, Dwayne, and why he's likely to be pulling the strings?
So first on the Agatha Harkness bit, I 100% think that you're right, and I think that what probably happened is she started this and then got overwhelmed by Wanda's power.
Interesting.
Because if since we like to jump around here, we jump to the scene with Sparky, and when the boys are like, "Bring him back, Mom," and Agnes's response was, "You can do that."
Mm-hmm.
She's not fully aware of how powerful Wanda really is. So I think that she started something and then Wanda is now containing it, and that's why it's only taken over Westview. I think that had Wanda not been in control, it would have enveloped the entire world, which it probably will, and then result in
Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness,
or Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. But Mephisto.
But they they directly addressed that in the episode where they're saying she could have taken out Thanos single-handedly had the events of it not transpired the way it did.
Which felt like such a fan service moment because I've had that conversation with other people. But also to see characters in that world recognize that that's true. Like, Wanda is the most powerful Avenger. There is no doubt about that in my mind. But the Mephisto of it all, I can't help but think we still have not seen or met Agnes's hubby.
Oh. Good old Fred.
It's not Fred, is it?
Ralph. One of those 1950s all-American generic names.
Crammed in.
Dwayne, give us a little primer on Mephisto.
So Mephisto is essentially the devil of Marvel. Although they've kind of retconned that a couple times and changed it back a couple times to where he was impersonating
Comic books
Satan.
do that?
Audience real.
But there was so originally when he appears, he is impersonating Satan. He isn't actually the devil, and then later it's changed to he actually is the devil, and then it's changed back to he's impersonating the devil. But we've seen him in multiple things that we've actually already seen him on screen in Ghost Rider. If anybody is familiar with Ghost Rider, Mephisto
Peter Fonda.
is
Peter Fonda.
Peter Fonda. Yes. So Mephisto is the demon responsible for giving the Ghost Rider his powers.
What if they brought Peter Fonda?
Did he appear in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or they didn't?
No, he did not, because that was a different Ghost Rider. There are actually, I think there's 12 different Ghost Riders, and they all have different sources to their powers.
So Ghost Rider is like Captain Who or Doctor Who, excuse me. Got it.
Kind of, yeah.
That was a joke. And also, Tim, is that the character played by, is it Emma Caulfield, a la Angel or Buffy? Is that who Jan Levinson is?
Jan Levinson is a character from The Office.
Okay. I didn't know the other character's name we were talking about.
Emma Caulfield's character's name is Dottie.
Dottie. Okay.
And if I remember correctly, I think Mephisto is also Nightcrawler's father.
I think it's Azazel.
No, Azazel is Nightcrawler's father. Sorry.
That's the guy I keep picturing in my head whenever you talk about Mephisto, and I see him as, I can't pull the actor's name from First Class because he has like no lines, but that's the visual I get when you talk about him.
Something. I know he's in Guy Ritchie stuff.
Yes,
but
is it Fleming? Thank you.
But Mephisto and his responsibility in the comics, in what is going on to the situation that this is sort of similar to. After Vision dies, there's a couple different things that happens, but one of the things that happens is Mephisto basically disintegrates, and he kind of creates, for those familiar with Harry Potter, he creates Horcruxes, and his soul gets scattered across the universe, and he uses agents to reconstitute his soul. 2 pieces of his soul end up in Wanda.
So what you're saying is literally nothing J.K. Rowling created was original.
The panel will accept that, discuss, and
pretty much
judge accordingly.
I second that motion.
But then the 2 pieces of Mephisto's soul that Wanda uses creates the twins.
And Dwayne, do you think, as far as like how this is going, do you expect that to be where they're going with this? Because a lot of times I know they borrow from comic storylines, but they don't directly one-to-one line up.
I do, but I don't think that our villain is going to be Mephisto.
Ooh.
I think that our big bad or overarching villain is going to be someone that we have seen already in the MCU, and I believe that it's going to be Dormammu.
Whoa. Okay.
So what were you thinking, Eric?
I'm going with the obvious choice. The thing that you see every time at the end of an episode of WandaVision, Ultron's coming back in this.
I do think Ultron is coming back, or we're at least going to see him in this show. I don't know if we're going to see him as Ultron. I think we're going to see him just as James Spader.
Whoa.
Because
that would make me really happy.
I do believe that there was a rumor this week that James Spader is in the show.
The only other thing, and this is completely out of left field, since he's
the fucking Lizard King.
The only other thing that I'm thinking while we're speculating of big bad villains, and I don't know, and maybe Dwayne and Eric, you could see if there were Easter eggs about this, but only strictly because they put Evan Peters in. The only other thing I would think about would be Mr. Sinister.
Jumping the gun there.
Mr. Sinister. The only reason I don't think Mr. Sinister fits is because he is traditionally associated with Apocalypse.
Okay.
Because he is a mutant.
Yeah, I know.
So that kind of that I
Well,
think that's the only reason maybe they wouldn't bring him in. But I think this is Dormammu only because I think the snap affected more than we realized.
Interesting.
I think that people think that like I think that when the snap happened, it affected all realities.
Yes.
So the mirror dimension, the dark dimension, all realities. And Dormammu was in the 50% that got snapped away.
And that would be a great tie-in again, going back to Doctor Strange 2 and the Multiverse of Madness. That would be a direct line. Like,
yeah.
So there's two words that have been mentioned that we're going to skip ahead and talk about the ending and the ramifications of that. So Dwayne used the word mutant, and Dan said Evan Peters. So look, we all know Wanda's twin brother is Pietro, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson in Avengers: Age of Ultron, who was just seen last year in Tenet, accomplished Golden Globe winning actor who specifically said, and I'm saying this just to quell anyone who was tweeting about how sad he must be, that he only agreed to sign on to the MCU for a one-movie contract. He had no interest in a multiple movie contract.
Which I also think I'll go from there, which I think led to very interesting choices in the writing of the MCU, and then I think led to a brilliant. This is why I like seeing how tight the writing is, because as soon as you see Evan Peters show up and Darcy goes, "She recast Pietro," like,
yeah,
love that line so much.
Clever,
Great line.
so happy. Like,
again, that is literally her being the audience surrogate. I can't think of any TV show where there's been such an obvious audience surrogate. So Pietro comes back at the end, and we first see the shot from behind. We see the silver hair, and the camera turns around, and here he is. It's Evan Peters as Pietro. Very attractive Evan Peters, who I think is more attractive than Aaron Taylor Johnson, just for what it's worth.
My favorite part of that whole sequence was they cut his hair. His hair is not the same as it was in Days of Future Past, and it was specifically cut so that from behind he looked
from
like
behind,
Taylor Johnson. And for a second, I was like, "Whoa, did they get Aaron Taylor Johnson back for this?"
I tell you, but what I honestly first thought it was Steve Rogers. When you have old silver gray hair,
interesting.
That's what I thought was gonna, because they were saying that it was like, what if we put somebody in there who she doesn't have to like create a memory for? So I thought they were literally just going to be like, "Hey, Steve, come see if you can save her," and that's where I thought they were going.
So Aaron Taylor Johnson's Pietro passed away in Age of Ultron. That was really the only movie we saw him in. He was in one other post-credit scene, which I think was filmed as part of Age of Ultron, so it was really a one-movie contract. And we've talked a lot about the various traumas Wanda's facing, one of which is the death of her brother. So it makes perfect sense that in creating this fictional illusory world for herself, that she'd bring back her brother.
And before we get too far away from it, because I do want to talk about bringing back Quicksilver, but like, as you're saying, like dealing with that trauma, like the fact that they give her the line to her kids going, "No, don't age up. You need to deal with this." It's like you're getting such an interesting dichotomy, and we'll have to go back to that when it talks to like acting and range and what they're really able to like put into this show. And she's saying specifically to her kids, "You need to deal with this drama and grief." And that's where the whole conversation was. They're like, "No, bring him back." And it's like, it's interesting seeing something that's normally an inner character conflict being totally flushed out with other characters. But then you're seeing her talk about it in the sitcom, her talk about it like to the sword people right outside the Hex. Like, it's so cool. And then that final, build to Evan Peters, like, whoa. And
on that point, just about Elizabeth Olsen, like, I legitimately think she's giving an Emmy Award worthy performance on this show. And a year ago, I would have said there's no way the Emmys are going to recognize WandaVision, but then they nominated The Mandalorian for Best Drama, so I think anything's possible, especially with Disney's PR budget. But anyways, okay, so Aaron Peters shows up as Quicksilver, and the ramifications of this are mind-blowing, both in terms of the contextual MCU, but also like real-world business. So I saw an article where someone said Disney paid 70 some odd billion dollars so they could get Evan Peters in their streaming show, which is a very surface level analysis of what happened. But I think one of the things a lot of fans talked about with the potential sale of Fox to Disney was getting the X-Men in the MCU. I think that was the wrong thing to focus on because I'm more concerned about corporate monopoly and collusion and having one company owning too much content, et cetera, et cetera. But
I think Eric and I were discussing that 2-3 years ago when this merger first happened.
First, the rumor started.
Really quite cool to see.
Yes.
An X-Men character who's been in two X-Men films. Was he in Dark Phoenix?
I think he was in
Yeah.
So he's in 4.
No, 3.
He wasn't
no.
in First
In
Class.
Days of Future Past, Apocalypse,
And then
in Dark
Dark
Phoenix.
Phoenix. It was
And
Dark Phoenix. I totally understand if you guys forgot about it.
It's sort of a
I haven't
coin
seen
toss
it.
as to if I'd rather watch that or Apocalypse, frankly.
Ooh.
I haven't seen Dark Phoenix. That's the only one, and I'm like, I'm not
I will say
looking-
this. The score that Hans Zimmer wrote for Dark Phoenix is so much better than that movie deserves.
And I was going to say, and that ends the positives of that movie, correct?
Uh,
The actors did a good
ends.
job in it. Some of them.
They tried.
Gene, you know I can't walk.
That sequence, again,
well,
me
speak-
laughing, I don't think was what they were going for.
Speaking of just that character that you referenced there, I don't think that this was the appearance that Elizabeth Olsen.
Oh,
was
no.
Oh, no.
I don't think so either.
Um,
No, 'cause she was
yes,
talking about a cameo, and this really wasn't a cameo at this point.
I
We assumed
agree.
that this is going to be a multiple episode thing.
He did show up briefly in Deadpool too.
He's the one who
Oh,
shuts the door
yeah.
on Deadpool.
That little like
I-
hallway scene.
wholeheartedly believe that we're gonna see Ian McKellen in this show.
Yeah. So I was
Man.
talking about that last night. I can't remember if it was off air or on air during our watch along, probably off air. So we have we theoretically now have mutants in the MCU, or at least a character who the last time we saw him we knew was a mutant. So then that begs the question: are Wanda and Pietro forged from Mephisto's soul stones, or are they Magneto's kids?
Pure speculation. I don't know if they'll, because they even mention in this particular episode like who their parents are. So
Yeah.
if they went back even further and be like, no, they're this guy's kids, I feel like Marvel does a really good job of, even when they're retconning their own universe, they're doing a good job of keeping it neat so it's easy to follow. I think if you add Magneto directly saying he's their kids, that's going to be more
But there is, of course, the notion of biological parentage versus parentage.
Sure, like if you're going further to say who it's not Von Zima, who's the Baron who like engineered that?
Strucker.
Strucker.
So if you're going
Which we
further,
saw that watch commercial for a couple weeks ago.
so if you're going saying Strucker used part of Magneto's DNA to help stabilize it or something, that I buy. That makes sense to me. So that way, like, he's their kid, they're his kids, but like not verbatim, like not biologically, but like since their genes were altered, I would buy that.
I like
So-
that. I think that works well also with the theory that's kind of going around that the two people that appear in all the commercials could potentially be their parents.
Ooh, I like
From back in
that.
Sokovia.
Hmm.
And she's using their image as the in the commercials to kind of, that's just her memories. Each commercial like represents part of her memories and trauma and everything.
Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but when they're doing the brand was Lagos this time, right? For the paper towels
From
So
Civil
that-
War, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's her like doing another layer of trying to think about cleaning up her mess that was caused.
Mhm.
Okay.
So, a couple thoughts.
Lots of thoughts.
So obviously, there's a
Oh.
lot of questions as to why Pietro now looks different and is played by Evan Peters. So I want to bring up this comment Patty said. Can't help but think that Ralph is disguised as this Pietro.
Ooh.
So I'm not sure if it's a Ralph that's disguised as Pietro, but I could definitely see someone else being disguised as Pietro, particularly as a way of explaining the difference of appearance. But also, you have a Fox X-Men character now in the MCU. The mind boggles as to what else we could see and who else we could see. And when Dwayne was talking about the snap affecting other dimensions, I'm wondering if they're going to use the snap as a way to explain why the X-Men haven't been in the MCU previously and are now aware of this world or have come over.
That would be a real simple 1-to-1. Like, I also like that while we're still talking.
My theory, and this is only because the only person who saw Pietro so far is Darcy. My theory is that when Jimmy Woo sees him, that's going to be his informant, the person that he was looking for the entire time.
He's the missing person.
Yeah, I think he's going to be the missing person.
Oh, interesting.
Hey, go nutshell that again for me, because I missed where he said he had an informant who was a missing person.
That's why he came to Westview to begin with. That's because that's how he discovered the anomaly, is because he was looking for his witness protection person that was in witness protection.
Yeah,
so he didn't get in touch with them.
He had a hard time pinpointing him because he kept around.
And then he is one person that we have yet to see on screen, is the person that brought Jimmy Woo there to begin with.
Also, we stand Jimmy Woo on this network. Jimmy Woo.
100%. So there's a brief scene in this episode where he is bringing his friends coffee, and the sheer joy.
Love it.
I think he's just happy that he has friends.
It's literally like
those coffee cups are the cups that we used to have in my office. Like the second I saw them, I was like, "Oh, those are the coffee cups in the office."
Wait, so those are the coffee cups you had in your office. Then that means, what is that? Oh my gosh!
Damn it, Dwayne! Why?
I want to touch on Dwayne's Ian McKellen prediction. So I was actually thinking the other day. So Paul Bettany said it's an actor that he's always dreamed of working of. And that it was an honor to work with him. And so I'm thinking, like, okay, could it be Benedict Cumberbatch? Sure. Could it be Michael Fassbender? Sure. But who, if you're growing up as a British actor, is someone that theoretically could be in this universe that you have always dreamed of working of? And that's where I came to Ian McKellen.
Or you could go Patrick Stewart too in that same breath.
Sure.
I thought of that, but then I was like, that doesn't really make sense for this character. Like the person that's like Luke Skywalker level for this character,
right,
is Magneto.
Right, and I agree. Evan Peters is not the Luke Skywalker size cameo, because I think Evan Peters is going to be sort of a regular character for the rest of the run of the show.
Yeah, he's already credited in the credits.
Can we talk about his accent real quick? How he totally.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, he's like, I'm from Brooklyn. What are you doing? You got a hug?
I don't know if we'll get to see him use his powers, but I kind of hope so, because that scene in Days of Future Past is like one of my favorite superpower scenes in a modern comic book movie. And I like how the X-Men verse visualized Quicksilver's power better than Age of Ultron.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I think it was. It's also like with those movies, you could tell what they were leaning into for Days of Future Past and Apocalypse, and they knew where their sweet spot was. Those movies, I like Days of Future Past. Apocalypse is horror, and I didn't see Dark Phoenix yet, but you can tell where it's like, we know what you're coming to see. We're going to give you this sequence exactly how you want to see it. So,
right.
Whereas Quicksilver in Age of Ultron is much more like eighth banana in that film, like. Right. You're not going to see Age of Ultron for Quicksilver.
Now,
and in Days of Future Past, he is Magneto's kid.
It's implied. It's not.
It's implied. It's not.
Now, here's why I don't think it's Ian McKellen, because you talked about how it's someone he wanted to work with, Paul Bettany. They've already did a movie together, The Da Vinci Code.
Whoa!
Oh, but did they have scenes together?
Yes.
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
Interesting.
He was
Silas, and
I
Right. Interesting.
So maybe we can start dipping into the Sir Patrick Stewart pool into that theory. Xavier shows up at the end.
Yeah, it's a little further of a tie as opposed to directly from Pietro to Magneto. It's a little further, but you do know Wanda is telekinetic and telepathic, which is your direct line to.
Or at least that's what they think her powers are. Because I think Dwayne's mentioned this a couple of times on here. No one in the MCU actually knows what her powers are.
Powers are limitless at this point.
Was his quote that it was somebody that he wanted to work with ever since like he was younger? Or is it somebody that he wanted to work with like now? Because I don't think he had any scenes with Benedict Cumberbatch in Infinity War.
Cumberbatch or Fassbender.
Yeah.
I think we're getting a little bogged down on this too, though.
No, we need to know the answers now.
Sure. Pontificate on this for another 40
But I mean, even if the character is Professor Xavier, I think that the more fitting Professor Xavier to pick from would be James McAvoy over Patrick Stewart, just because at this point, Patrick Stewart has kind of got his nice, tight goodbye from X-Men. Like I think if we brought him back now, it would kind of tarnish what he got.
Although
in X-Men.
I don't disagree with that, but I also feel this is sort of Kevin Feige's planting the flag, saying all bets are off for what Fox characters you may see integrated into the MCU.
Yep.
I'm not saying we're going to see Hugh Jackman back as Wolverine, but I'm not saying that's not a possibility.
What if that was now my brain's
I don't think that fits with this story.
But holy shit.
But I'm not so sure they're going to recast that many of the X-Men at this point.
Yeah. No, I don't think they're going to recast very many of them either.
I think Fassbender is going to be Magneto in the MCU again. And McAvoy is Professor X at this point, based on seeing Evan Peters.
We'll see. It's so interesting to see. And so I want to go back, and at least because we're
Hugh Jackman as Ralph.
I
knew it.
And he's literally just a dude who's just trying to be a good husband.
That would be amazing. Like the other episode where you have the dude literally taking his hedge trimmers through the brick, and that's what I kind of want to go back to. I want to go back to those small moments because as soon as we need to mention, I want to talk specifically about the acting and what they're doing as far as the story goes. Because I feel like the MCU was always great with story, but a lot of the spectacle overshadowed it. And it's interesting that we're getting a show now that's like ongoing. This is the first, you can call Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. an MCU series if you want, but
it started out very much in the MCU and then it sort of split.
And when we talk about WandaVision, they're saying this is the first thing that's directly affecting the timeline. And I love that they're letting all these, you don't get these moments in the blockbuster movies because they have so much more to accomplish. But the acting, especially in this episode from Paul Bettany, from Elizabeth Olsen, and then the guy, I don't know the actor's name, I should look it up, but the guy in The Office, when he talks to Norm, holy shit, the shift he's doing mid-scene,
right?
Have one or two cuts, and he's freaking out, and then he goes right back to in the same shot. Well, hi, and I'm like, holy shit, that's so affecting.
Right. So, and you bring up the other big thread of the episode, which is Detective Vision.
Mm-hmm.
TM.
I want he gets the Sherlock hat and the pipe too.
Yeah. So
he does Cumberbatch.
Vision.
Cumberbatch is.
Obviously Vision has always been aware of Wanda's powers and that she has a certain level of control over what's going on. But this is the first episode where we really see him exhibiting fear and concern and questioning what exactly is Wanda doing, who and what these are, and what's happening and whose lives is she affecting, etc.
Real quick, thank you, Patty. Patty said it in the comments. The actor's name, Asif Ali.
And I have this photo here of Asif and Paul's just remarkable hairpiece that he's got going on there. Really, the show's wig game is just
on point.
On point.
Well, I was going to say, the last 5 minutes of that episode is some of the most chilling, heartbreaking. I was on the edge of my feet during that conflict while the credits were rolling, which I thought was a nice touch.
That was so brilliant.
I love that. Yeah.
But literally when these start they're both flying about ready to Matt.
You mean this?
Yes.
I come prepared.
I know you would, Maxwell. But
well, my favorite is I've seen a couple tweets with this photo and the caption "Marriage Story 2019."
But it's just that was just so well done, and just his performance. Like, I don't know anything before here, and that is just so terrifying.
Well, and they also had I believe it was the director earlier on when who said Vision specifically didn't want to be brought back in any way, or his corpse or his body to be used as a weapon.
This is the first time you're seeing in the first few episodes, you're seeing those breadcrumbs, and you're seeing the scenes where it's like there's like a horror cut in an earlier episode where you see dead Vision for a half a second and he's talking. Yeah, agreed, Mike. And he's talking, but you're seeing that, you're seeing the redoing of scenes, and you're seeing how it's, whether or not Wanda's meaning to do it, how it's all coming from her. And I like how, if it's all coming from her, she still knows enough about Vision to know how he would organically react in that situation. Because in that last 5 minutes, you're getting shit and you're getting emotions that he would never have as a character. So it's very clearly there's a mirror here from, because he becomes more emotional as a character as he develops, but he's a machine to some extent.
Well, one of Vision's arcs in the MCU was learning to be more human.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of that was his relationship with Wanda. But this is undoubtedly the most human we've ever seen Vision.
Yep.
I think that there's 4 characters that are like important to really watch, and it's Agnes, Vision, and the twins. And it's because of those 4, Wanda seems to have the least amount of control, if she is truly the one controlling this, over those 4 characters. Agnes, whatever control Wanda has, seems to still at least be willing to do she's not like everyone else in Westview that is completely trapped. She knows what's going on and is still willing to participate in whatever's happening.
Mm-hmm. Right. When
she
talking
has
about
zero
Vision,
control over Vision.
Both Cheryl and Patty had very similar points. It looked like Sword was doing something to his body. Were they experimenting on him against his wishes? And Patty said they're painting Wanda as the villain, but she could have been saving his body from whatever they were doing to him. And I said it last week. Yeah. In no way, shape, or form do I trust that mediocre white man who's in charge of Sword.
No, I just don't think that she was, hey, you've got my husband's body. Give me my husband's body.
Right.
I don't think that
the director is very much in a position to manipulate the way everyone else at that base are viewing what's going on.
Jimmy Woo says it. That's an oversimplification of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Because I think someone, I can't remember who, said that they're getting Alexander Pierce vibes from the director of Sword. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I agree with that.
A little bit of Thunderbolt Ross also.
Yeah. For sure.
Although that's really interesting comparisons, because when you think about it, sure. Oh, there you go.
That's interesting question.
Even though
the acting director, he hasn't been officially hired as a director.
True, acting director. Maybe he's not even. Maybe he's. I don't know.
To answer that, he doesn't really report to anyone. Similar to Nick Fury, he's the top of the Sword hierarchy, and then it's whatever. I believe it's the same organization that controls Shield controls Sword. So
okay, but didn't he say I had to get permission to show this footage?
Yes, he does.
He probably had to get it from the World Security Council, I believe is what it's called in the MCU.
That's who it was in first Avengers.
Yeah.
And so is General Ross a part of that?
Maybe.
General Ross was the Secretary of Defense for the United States.
Yeah. Okay. And so that's what I was going to say. And
so excuse me, Secretary Ross. Forgive me, fictional character I mislabeled.
No. Well, when we're reintroduced to him in Civil War, he's now the Secretary of Defense.
Right.
But he was a general when we're initially introduced to him.
And
Tyler is correct in saying never trust ultra powerful white man in a suit. I agree.
Yes.
And
couldn't agree more.
The only stipulation I want to add to that real quick is Pierce was legit in Hydra, whereas Thunderbolt Ross is just he's trying to do things for the greater good, but kind of bumbling his way through it and fumbling quite a lot.
Yeah.
So there is different. I like that they're doing.
Oh
that.
yeah,
You have
he's
different.
he's an ordinary man trying to make his way through a world of superheroes.
Exactly.
So Laundry Day says, do you think that Wanda making the berries stronger open up the multiverse?
I think that's how.
Not yet. I think. Yeah, I was gonna say. I think we're yet to see what opens the multiverse, and I think it's going to be an expanding of the anomaly or hex or whatever you want to call it.
Yes, Ross is in Black Widow.
But Black Widow's a flashback movie, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think, not to go too far off the rails, I think the Black Widow movie is going to be bookended by current scenes featuring Florence Pugh and one or two other Avengers characters, and then it'll flash back, and then it'll come back, and we'll see Florence Pugh taking over the Black Widow moniker and joining the Avengers. But that's But yes, General Ross, I believe, is in Black Widow.
I think this is all leading to Young Avengers. I think that we will probably. I think maybe at the end of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, we will get the twins as we know them post House of M and all that fallout. I don't think that we're going to see Speed and Wiccan in the show.
Okay.
But I think that might be the goal of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is getting the twins back.
Here's my question. Are those really her kids? Or are they just kids from Westview that she has playing the roles of her kids?
I think they're really her kids.
I think they really are her kids. And
I
think that may be the impetus of what started this was her dealing with finding out that she was pregnant when I think that she was pregnant when she was snapped away.
I agree.
And possibly didn't know, and then came back to a dead Vision, two children that
I think the line
she wasn't ready
she
for.
says to Thanos, "You took everything from me," is going to reveal itself to have more layers than even we knew at that point in the end game.
I think one of the big things that to highlight also is that they made a really strong point to say that everything within the anomaly is real. Both like the outfit that Monica was wearing, you saw the jump rope being pulled back out of the sewer line after the beekeeper situation. Everything that gets altered and changed in there is real. So those kids are real, and they probably will exist outside of the anomaly too.
Right, and because they have their own powers.
Yeah.
She said we saw them age themselves up.
But the one thing I will say, two things. One, I don't think that they both aged themselves up. If you know, Wiccan, one of the twins, has powers very similar to his mother. Yeah. I think,
which is why one looked to the other.
Yes, and then Speed has powers very similar to Quicksilver. So I think that might be a little wrinkle that we're going to see. Unk showing the young kid how to use his powers, but
whoever they cast as I say middle-aged, even though like the middle age of what we saw the babies were the sweetest little kids. Their voices, their tone, I was just like, I don't know where they found these kids, but I'm immediately like care for them and don't want anyone to hurt them.
Yeah,
right. But everything with Sparky was so sweet.
What's interesting though is with the creating everything that's inside of the hex, everything is real, but it all came from somewhere. Like Monica's outfit, it was just transformed matter. So Wanda cannot just create the children. So that's what people have to remember. Everything in there, it's just transformed matter. Physics still exists in this reality,
but it's still worth noting that, like, physics exists, but she can literally manipulate atoms. That's how she is.
Absolutely, but the kids came from somewhere, so they are real.
And I'd be curious to know, and this is clearly more speculation, but if we, and by we talking about here, I mean if Feige had went that far, I'm sure they had an outline for WandaVision, but I'm wondering if they're shooting Infinity War and Endgame knowing like, oh, by the way, Scarlet Witch is pregnant through all of this. Like, because like how deep back do you go with planting those seeds?
This is interesting. Since Wanda was able to reassemble Vision without the Mind Stone, will Vision be able to survive beyond the barrier, essentially Pinocchio becoming a real boy?
In putting this real quick, Dwayne, in putting that out there, I think that goes to your theory about Ultron, because Vision was initially an Ultron surrogate. So I think that's going to be an interesting little wrinkle as well.
And I will also say, I don't think that she has reformed.
I agree.
Vision.
Well, we saw his corpse. What was that? Episode 3?
Like 3 or 2.
Or 4?
No, 4. It was the last episode.
4, which was super chilling.
The bubble.
No,
it was last
episode. It was so.
That was this episode. Then
she hasn't reconstituted or reassembled Vision. It is possible to do, as we saw in Infinity War. It's possible to recreate him without the Mind Stone. He did not need the Mind Stone to survive. They just needed to finish the process, which they were unable to do. And I don't think Wanda is capable of doing.
Agreed. That's why.
Hence why I think we are gonna get her. We're gonna get a reconstituted Vision, but we're gonna get the. I bet. You know what? I wouldn't be surprised.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
But we're gonna get Gray Vision at the end of this.
Yes.
But that's actually that goes back to what I was saying about their fight at the very end of the show, where it's much more reflective of how Vision would be like, how he would be commentating, and not necessarily what Vision would be saying as a character, but like him holding up a mirror to her saying like, even if you're not meaning to do this, you're doing it on some level. Like,
I do think Vision and Wanda as a relationship are probably not long for this world after this show, unless it becomes very clear that someone else was significantly controlling Wanda.
Yes. I think that's happening regardless. I think you're going to have a little bit of all of that you'll have her dealing with grief. You'll have somebody else pulling the strings, and it's going to be somewhere in the middle.
I have a separate theory also. I kind of brought this up on the recap that we were doing last night, but I wanted to bring it up again. Is that there's a potentiality that I go back to when she busted out of the barrier and she was talking to the sword agents. Definitely she had a tinge of anger in her voice for sure, but I felt like it also sounded like a tinge of desperation too, to try to hold on to what she has created. Should we assume that she's creating everything? But I also think that the show is doing a good job of trying to paint her as a villain right now, to try to make it look like she's got dubious motives. But I'm wondering if part of what's going on in this reality that she is morphing or creating or what have you is that she's actually trying to protect the people in the town, trying to protect other things around her, because she is aware of somebody else to some degree above her who's manipulating things, and so she's trying to actually be heroic in keeping people alive. So this is kind of her roundabout way of doing it.
Oh, I like that.
Well, because she keeps telling Vision, like in this episode, I'm trying to protect you from what's outside. Now, to us, the only thing outside is just Sword and Agent Wu.
I think she's protecting,
or his or him not being alive, his corpse.
I think she's protecting three things. She's protecting Vision, and then, as we've seen several times throughout the show, for the children, she's protecting the twins.
But while we're having this conversation and we're talking about manipulating matter, so we know Vision is technically a corpse. Who's Quicksilver?
I think that Evan Peters in our reality was the informant. I think that's what it's going to be.
Applying the existence of two Quicksilvers in the MCU?
No. I think he's applying that Evan Peters is an informant who's now inside.
I don't think he actually is Pietro.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that he's
just the heavy Brooklyn accent.
Yeah. Just as everyone else in the town has been cast in the show, I think he has been cast in the show.
Okay.
And his actual personage in the MCU was Jimmy Woo's witness protection
Yeah, I don't think he's from like an alternate reality or anything. I think he's somebody who existed as a real person within the way the universe is set up right now.
I gotta go, guys. I gotta go talk science with Brandon Hanna and James White.
Have fun, Dwayne. Thanks for joining us.
Talking with you guys.
Nice chatting with you, Dwayne.
If you guys have any questions, I will be here in full capacity next week, and you can always hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, whatever's. So bye, guys.
At Burkmade.
Yes, at Burkmade.
So it'll be interesting to see if he is just a plain resident of Westview, depending on how far Wanda's powers go. Does he become the heir to Quicksilver? Does he find himself with powers when whatever happens ends?
Yeah. The Evan Peters of it all is fascinating to me.
You say that so much. Like, I really can't get you to stop using that phrase.
No, there's just, it's just, you saw the reaction online. I mean, a lot happens in this episode, a lot of stuff that I think we may not even realize the impact of it until the end of the series. But the most obvious one is Evan Peters. Who is he really? It's so interesting.
Yeah. And we should talk briefly about how I'm sure you brought this up on other episodes, but this is such a great story to be released episodically, because if this is dropped to binge, it's just not as valuable.
There's been some debate about that on this network, actually.
To see it dropped like as a binge.
So the argument from some people was that they should have put the first 3 or 4 out altogether, because those first 2 sitcom episodes weren't enough for them to be hooked. I didn't agree with that. I felt like personally that the sitcominess of it all was so well done and delightful, and there was just enough little tidbits. Like the second episode ends with the beekeeper. Like that's a huge hook right then and there. But there's a reason. No. There's a reason that we call this the water cooler chat. There's the old model where, at your office the next morning after whatever aired that night before, be it Cheers or ER or Friends or Lost or Game of Thrones, you would talk about it at the water cooler. It's an old-fashioned saying.
Does it hurt your soul a little bit that there's like a generation of people who don't know this releasing of television?
So I'll tell you what hurts my soul, and I think I said this last week, I can't remember, is I have seen some people call the week by week model the Disney Plus model. And the thing is, and bear with me guys, it's just the TV model. It's just television. And people act as if network television doesn't still exist with fairly popular shows like This Is Us and NCIS and Brooklyn Nine-Nine and all the CW shows.
I do think they've started
one episode at a time.
I think they've started to get away from that model though, because if you go back 10 years, they're starting to slowly get away from a model of having 22, 24 hour episodes that have a lot of filler.
Yes, network other than procedurals, cop shows where I think that works fine because you have a case of the week, that's fine. Network TV has definitely learned stuff from streaming. Heavily serialized shows like Manifest, for example, are doing 13 episode seasons, which you never would have seen even 10 years ago around the Lost era. But I think we're also now seeing Buck says he's on his own stream right now and wishes he could watch this. Hey, Buck, I hope your stream is going well.
Yeah, we appreciate your view.
Streaming is learning from TV, where the best way to build buzz and conversation is releasing week by week.
We had that conversation. Eric, do you remember the other things that were being issued? And this was, we're coming up to 2 years ago for the end of Game of Thrones. Do you remember the other pieces of media that were coming out around the same summer? Because Game of Thrones ended in April, but it was also the same time you were getting, I think that was Solo we had coming out at the same time. And we were talking about what was going to be the biggest impact. And we both easily landed on Game of Thrones because it lasted for almost 2 full months, where you're getting that constant footprint in society, in online chatter. Like you can't.
Yeah, look at the Mandalorian was the first streaming show season 2 to get better Nielsen viewership than anything on Netflix.
Sure.
Now we don't know exactly how accurate those numbers are. The services don't release them. It's an antiquated model, but even from my perspective, the conversation surrounding it lasted for months. Where even the most popular Netflix, even Stranger Things, which I would argue of all of Netflix's shows is the most nerd-friendly, the most one you could theorize, discuss, analyze. Like of all the Netflix shows, that's one where we could do a water cooler chat. It's dropped all at once, so people binge it, and a week later they moved on to talking about something else.
Cobra Kai. I watched first day of the new year, and I was done with it. I mean,
we should stick a pin in this conversation, and we'll pick it up on Thursday.
Right.
Because we'll have a lot more to go into there. I liked what Laundry said over here. I apologize for not knowing your real name. That like Pietro was manifested as a defense mechanism for Wanda because she was losing control. I like that because it was clearly maybe not losing control, but she's starting to like her point of view was starting to be shifted and pivoted. So it's like, how do you distract that? Let's put in this character who somebody else all knows. Like the balance of the
Buck
show
says on the same note, Pietro came from outside the hex. Sword alarm was going off. Excuse me, at the end of the episode.
Ooh,
which I never even drew that parallel. And Patty says, I think it's something along those lines. I don't know that she did it, but I think someone has created this Pietro for her because of the stress in that situation. And what situation? This situation.
Exactly.
Keep coming back to it.
I don't know. There's something about this image that delights me.
It's
probably because you have two superpowered characters on what looks like the Full House set.
But that's what's so good. Like even with that particular shot and frame, they're not shooting it like a Marvel movie. The angles are still the same. You're still the 4-camera setup, and it looks like if you were going to have two superpowered people on the Full House set, they're going to be strung up by those two.
I brought this up pretty much every week. Like I think one of the major accomplishments of this show is its sort of use of mixed media, for lack of a better term. The way that it's integrated various aspect ratios, various film stock, as well as subtle but noticeable shifts in the tone of the score has been so perfectly calibrated. And I also think the fact that every episode has been directed by the same guy, Matt Shackman has been the perfect choice to maintain this level of consistency, because when you're playing with all these different things,
you have to have,
and like that it looked, and I doubt they were, but it looked like they were shooting the 80s sitcom moments on like an old video camera, which they would have shot Family Matters or Full House or Family Ties on in that bigger aspect ratio. Like this may go down as the TV show with the most aspect ratio shifts,
and I love it. This is the way to do, because I unfortunately saw Transformers 5 in theaters, and that has some of the worst aspect ratio shifting I've ever seen in my life. But this is the way to do it correctly, because when it's done correctly, it's so impactful. Like to me, the music changes aren't as noticeable because they're more subtle, but the aspect ratio is something that I'm noticing it like thinning down to be more cinematic, opening up to be more sitcom. And this was the first episode I feel like they did hard cuts between the two, because every other episode they've been like slowly merging.
Well, I think that's because now we as the audience have been introduced to both worlds, so they don't have to do the reveals. So where are all the kids is a really interesting question. Vision points out, as Detective Vision, like, there are no other kids. Every day on my way to work, I walk past the playground and it's still and empty.
It's like deeply disturbing when you think about that as a question inside, and like he doesn't know his memory. Like that whole scene is just like.
So I mean, maybe whether it's Wanda or whoever is controlling all of this, purposefully didn't bring the kids in, but then it does. Where are the kids? Are these people? It's very confusing and interesting.
I don't think those are her kids. I think those are kids in Westview that she's having them play the role of her kids.
I don't think so, because they have powers of their own.
Do they?
That's a good question too. Do they have powers?
I mean, she said don't age up.
But that's
she wouldn't have to say that to them if she was the one who did it prior.
Said that.
Say again.
Maybe.
I mean, the characters from the comics definitely have powers of their own. So if we go off that, then we would have to assume that they do. But still have like her DNA and everything. So
Mike K says, "Is the next episode a riff on Modern Family? I noticed some documentary elements. I do think we'll get there, but I feel like next week will be 90s.
Yes.
yeah.
Friends, Frasier, Seinfeld sort of thing.
I would love a Frasier episode.
Family Matters.
Yeah. And then I do think we'll very much see The Office, Modern Family documentary riff.
I can't.
Which will be fun.
These are so hard to like, even thinking about those, and you don't get this kind of pontificating about these shows without the great storytelling. We're like, who's in control? We really don't know. We're just going to sit here and be like, is this person in control? I don't know. Do they have powers, or is it just Wanda? I don't really know.
Well, Dwayne's not here anymore either, so we're all sort of just like, bleh.
I don't know the lore. I know most of the MCU storytelling, and this is why I'm so excited to see it in a new medium, because that you could call the MCU the greatest season of television ever to release to theaters, because it was
to theaters. Okay.
It was 22 episodes of 2-hour plus content per.
It was very expensive episodes of television.
And it was, but it was proved out. And I'm happy that I'm doing a little bit of overlap to what Eric and I will talk about. But I'm happy that most studios realize that like it's not sustainable and you can't really just jump into it. Like you have to do your homework. And I think that WandaVision is literally the conclusion of all that homework being done. Be like, you thought this was gnarly, what you saw in the theaters. Is there a convention that we're watching in WandaVision that they're not being meta about, that they're not turning on its head from the sitcom aspect to the storytelling? Like everything has been thought out so thoroughly in this show. It's insane.
It's like my wife said, why couldn't this be a movie? I just got up and left the room. I was like, you know what? I'm not having this.
It's funny that you said that, because I was literally just going to say someone whose name I don't want to name names, but someone tweeted yesterday that Buzzy show everyone is talking about should have been a movie.
Hard no.
So I disagree with that on so many points, but like my main point is we're dealing with something here that is literally playing and manipulating the very idiom of television.
Mm-hmm.
It would make no sense as a movie.
Right.
You could argue all you want if it's too long, if too many episodes. Let's see how it all wraps up. But the sitcom conceit, the shifting of each episode being a different decade, there would be no way to make that work in a film. It's about television.
I think you could.
And it's also letting the characters breathe in a way that a movie could not.
That's what it is. If you did this as a movie, especially a singular movie, because is it 10 episodes total for the season?
9 episodes. Let's average out 30 minutes, because some of the first were 20s and some now are 40. You're looking at 4.5 to 5 hours.
That's what I'm saying. You could possibly do it as one long movie or 2 decent run movies, but you're going to lose. You have to cut so much for pace, and that's what I think you're keeping in this story.
But also, I think the mystery element, the sitcom element, the character elements, if people had gone to see this new MCU movie in theaters, they would not be happy because it's not what they've been programmed to expect. But now you have this universe in a different format where you can, try new things.
Well, not only that, it'd just be no different than just dumping it all at the same time.
Yeah,
sure.
It would definitely be one of those streaming just drops, but it's also like it's so much harder to pitch the deconstruction of both comic book movies and sitcoms at the same time and be like, oh, by the way, we're going to do it as a movie. And then people would be like, what? Why?
Right. So with all due respect to your wife, who I'm sure is lovely.
She is.
I disagree.
Oh, I disagree with her too. That's what I said as I left the room.
It's also one of those things, if you look at what we have so far in these first 5 episodes, it's not really cinematic. Like they're leaning hard on cinematic tropes when you're doing the sword stuff and you're doing the stuff outside of Westview.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But
there's not action scene,
exactly.
If
it's
anything,
plot.
And some people may say that's because TV budget, but I think The Mandalorian has proven that's not the case. And I think in just a couple weeks, when the Falcon and the Winter Soldier starts, that's going to have a shit ton of action. And
off money, they don't care.
I want to wrap up here soon. I want to bring up a couple more things in the chat, and then we'll go around and let everyone give their final thoughts or anything else they want to bring up. Laundry Day says, I would love to bring in Patrick Stewart. So we did talk about that, whether we may see Professor X. Interesting.
Mhm.
So this is really interesting. Has Agnes been around every time the kids change?
Ooh.
Yes.
After birth, I believe, because she wasn't there when they were born.
Correct.
When they aged up
right.
by 5.
So technically,
She was in the vicinity.
Okay.
Yeah, when they aged up to 5, when they aged up to 10, she was there in both scenes. Yeah.
Yeah. She was there a couple times when Wanda was pregnant. So, because they tried to like hide it from her.
no, that was
Okay.
Rambo. No, because Catherine Hahn's only in that episode at the end when she's hanging out with I forget his name, the neighbor Herb. Yep.
And to Mike K, and so I don't know if it was you who tweeted this the other day, Mike, or someone else who felt the same way. I'm glad that this was the first series to kick off Phase 4, because what better way to introduce MCU fans to a new medium than a series about television? So pre-COVID, Falcon and the Winter Soldier was actually supposed to be the first MCU Disney Plus series. So partly what happened is their production got shut down and had to wait till productions could get back to work after COVID protocols have been put in place. But also, from what I've heard, they have made some changes to Falcon and the Winter Soldier based on the delay of Black Widow.
And that's what I would be really curious to know about. What were those story changes over those 3 properties, over Falcon and Winter Soldier, WandaVision, and Black Widow? Because they at least had to tinker with WandaVision to get it out first.
From what I've heard, and I don't pretend to be an expert or like super in the know, but WandaVision has not really changed at all.
Interesting. Okay.
WandaVision was not really that impacted by COVID-19.
Right. Because WandaVision really leads into Doctor Strange 2.
Mhm.
Yep.
Whereas some element of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So my guess, and I'm totally theorizing here, is that originally Florence Pugh was in Falcon and the Winter Soldier and may have been cut out of it or replaced with a different character because we have not seen Black Widow yet.
The only possible connection I could see is because Black Widow technically takes place like right after Civil War, is the idea that maybe Maria Rambeau in the formation of Sword or something is happening during that time period. But that'd be about the only connection I can see there.
Interesting. So I would love one day to know what they changed in Falcon and Winter Soldier, but I don't think it's anything significant anyways.
It'll be interesting. I feel like that, I don't know, and they're doing Falcon and Winter Soldier clearly after the events of Endgame. So I like that, like, at least so far, WandaVision seems like you could speculate. Like, do we even know roughly what Falcon and Winter Soldier storyline is going to be about? Or is it just like buddy cop comedy gallivanting the globe?
I mean, we know Baron Zemo is back as the villain, which is awesome. We know, I think Emily Van Camp is in it a little bit.
She's in it, that's confirmed.
Okay.
But in terms of like narrative, they've been pretty hush hush. I mean, we've barely seen any footage.
So I just think it's interesting that they had to tweak a little bit of that, as because you saw, and this is maybe how we were going into it 10 plus years ago, and we were like, how are you going to put Captain America in? Because he's such a Boy Scout. And then like now we're all doing that. Like, what's the storyline of this? Because over here you have WandaVision where they're talking about it directly impacting, but it's like, I trust.
Well, it could be, an element that they introduced in Black Widow that was a part of Falcon and Winter Soldier that they have removed from Falcon and Winter Soldier because they'll integrate later into a movie. I don't know. I don't think it'll be anything to do with like the series' overall arc or character work, but maybe just a small element.
Gotcha.
Couple final things. Would Ralph be Mephisto or Dormammu? I don't necessarily agree with Dwayne's theory that it's Dormammu. It's possible, but yes, I do think it's possible. There's a clear other. So I said this maybe in our first episode that certainly the fact that we've never seen Ralph plays into the sitcom trope that there's always a character you hear about and don't see. Maris on Frasier, Howard's mom on Big Bang Theory, Stan on Will and Grace. But I do think they're sort of going to split the difference here, and we will meet Ralph, and it will be someone else.
I think that may be in like the penultimate episode. I'm thinking that's like one of the last things they'll show you, and then that'll be either a small cliffhanger for the finale or a big cliffhanger to end the series.
Yeah, I do think there will be quite a big cliffhanger, and people are going to be mad.
I don't mind,
but it's the MCU, so
also it's gonna be the cliffhanger that sets up a movie.
Yes,
right.
We're all going to be able to see.
Something interesting. I heard from Timeline this happens before. I assume you mean Far From Home. That's interesting. I'm not sure how relevant that'll be long term, but that is interesting. Yeah. I mean, certainly some of it happens at the same time because we saw the blip.
Yes. Oh my. Yeah. And that was, I know that was last episode, but the end, like the return of the blip, like I had a friend of mine comment on Twitter where he was like, do you think like he split the atom way too far where he's like, but what about all those people if like the Earth was in a different place around its orbit that just materialized in space? And I'm like, no.
Ultimately, you don't overthink these things. So look, we've gone on a while. We've talked about a lot of different stuff. We've theorized. Chris, what are your final thoughts on this episode? Any last minute things you want to say?
The one last little bit I wanted to say, kind of this episode is consistently highlighting things from like prior episodes, is that every time there is that tense situation that Wanda finds herself in, it looks like so far we've seen that she's doing something to try to break herself out of it. Like during the dinner scene in the first episode, she's the one that caused Mr. Hart to start choking.
So cool.
There's that aspect and kind of break her from those high tense situations. You know, you see her saying rewinding on Vision when he starts getting a little too ahead of himself there. And so we're kind of being taken down a path and made to believe that, okay, now she's bringing Pietro into the situation, which I love the little bit there, which is, I didn't do that. I know you don't believe me right now, but I didn't do this, which I think is a huge point. Like, oh, hey, we were bringing you one direction. Just kidding. There's something else going on. So I think we're definitely going to get some more answers to that next episode. I think we're definitely going to see a little bit more of Pietro and kind of find out what's going on with him next episode. So it's going to be a ton of fun.
All right, Eric, what are your final thoughts on the episode? Any last minute theories or ideas you want to bring up?
Follow me on my social media. I say this, I've said this for the past 3 weeks, that this is the best episode of the series. I want to keep the streak going until the very end because every week it keeps outdoing itself, and I appreciate that.
You shill.
I know. I'm such a
How dare you enjoy something?
But the last thing I want to talk about is really quick is a throwaway line that Vision says when he's fighting with Wanda. He's like, what do you want me to do? Sit down, watch TV, redo all of this? So, yeah, or that great shot. But another hint that Vision knows what's going on. And, like, maybe that's another way Wanda handles things is she resets it into a different decade so she keeps Vision at hold. And one last point, since this was more like a Full House episode, you think Elizabeth talked to her sisters about how to act in this?
There is part of me that wishes she had got them to come in for a cameo.
Oh man.
Or conversely, or at some point she turned to a character and went, how rude. But
there's still time. There's still time.
There's definitely still time. Definitely still time. All right, Dan.
Eric, I like everything you're saying about that. And like I think that's a great call that like she's using the time shift as another way of control, as another way of placating people. And I think you're slowly starting to see her lose control. And I think that's one of the interesting things we brought up a few times is how much control does she actually have versus how much is she manipulating? And I love that what's going on inside her head and what we're seeing, how much of it is reality, how much not, like the whole scope of this show and the fact that they're showing that through meta tropes, they're showing it through a cinematic lens with outside with sword, and then they're showing how it's being affected on the inside. Like it's the perfect amount of being aware of itself for me without being confusing or being like you're feeling bogged down in the story because they're doing such a good job and everyone's executing perfectly. So there's, when I joke and say Eric's like, this episode's the best episode, that the next episode's the best episode, there it's it's just keeping me hungry. It keeps me wanting more, that I want to see how this story goes. I don't know about ever could be Brandy, but definitely better utilized, and has taken, like, because those girls probably could have retired at age 22. Like, they didn't have to do anything else. Like, they made their money and they could be like, well, we're done.
They got their money. They got their fashion empire.
One of them, I don't remember which one, was actually pretty darn good on Weeds.
I didn't. We watched through like season 3 or 4, but I don't remember. I don't know if we got to her.
That's the only like adult.
Yeah,
I always feel weird, like grown-up role that I remember one of them playing, where I thought their acting was impressive.
And that's the thing, is like, I think you're seeing. I love the direction. I love that this is. I'm sad because of I'll throw this into another silver lining for the pandemic, because you had to change and pivot so much. But I'm happy that this is the first thing we're getting, because much like everything that they're putting after any Avengers film, there's always like a Spider-Man Homecoming or a Spider-Man Far From Home. You're getting something that's like a palate cleanser. And this is almost a palate cleanser being mixed with, like, you thought what you saw so far was interesting. We're going to give you the most out there possible thing that we can think of and see how you did. This is kind of like when Guardians got introduced, where it's like so out of left field. And
that's how I think the Eternals is going to be.
So that's where I was going with it.
Yeah, I mean, I am enjoying this so immensely. What I'm about to say is not me saying this is like the best TV show in years, because I don't feel that way. But this is the most fun I can remember having theorizing on a weekly basis about a show in many years. Like, honestly, like, since like Lost and Battlestar Galactica and Fringe and those shows, I can't remember the last time there was a show. Maybe Watchmen. Maybe The Watchmen was the last time I had this much fun, week by week, breaking it down. Because even, we did Mandalorian water cooler chat, and there was stuff to theorize and talk about. But that show was so much more straightforward and action focused that it didn't have the same level of mystery box. And it's just been such a blast. I guess you could argue Westworld, although I never quite found the theorizing behind that fun. I like the show, but it's just been a blast to talk about. So it makes our job easy. And my final thought is, I think the audience, meaning us, this is not what I said. This is not what I said. I specifically said I'm not saying this.
You just pulled the knot out. You did say everything else. Let's be fair.
Sure. If there was an ellipsis in there, which they do with film critic quotes all the time.
It's true. Or not in parentheses.
So I think us, the audience, is being manipulated much in the same way that the other sword agents are to think Wanda is a villain, and she is not.
A prisoner, probably.
I think she is doing some morally ambiguous things as a means of coping with her trauma. But I think there is still so much more going on than we have not. Yes, that was a screen rant clickbait title.
Perfect, Mike. Perfect.
That we have not seen that will reveal itself over the next. There's only 4 episodes left.
Oh my god.
Although I feel like each episode is going to be a little longer than the last one, so the finale will be like a 2.5 hour long film.
Yay!
And then everything we just talked about as far as timing goes is just out the window.
Fine, right. I'll take it.
Well, look, thank you all so much for watching. We had a really great viewership. This continues to be one of our most watched live shows on the network, and the chat was so engaged, and I love to see it. Eric, where can everyone find you online? You got anything to promote?
You can find me on Twitter at handsome_cheese, where I discuss movies, my horrible favorite football team, and of course, this wonderful show. Thank you, Marvel. And anything to promote? Thursday here on the.
I'll go into that a little more short.
You might see me.
Chris, what do you got going on? Where can people find you online?
Besides the fact that I'm mad that Eric took that Twitter handle from me when I was trying to get it initially, you can find me at Twitter, Instagram at Chris Adams MLP. Also over on the Cinefanatics channel, we do a lot of stuff over there, including our own recap of WandaVision every Friday night right now, which we're kind of doing with all the TV shows. So once we're done with WandaVision, obviously we'll move on to the next one too. But a lot of fun stuff going on over there. We kind of dive between me and my brother, we kind of dive a little bit further into Easter eggs and stuff as well. And since he's done a lot of like comic book reading and stuff, we kind of springboard off that stuff as well. So a lot of fun to do that over there. But yeah, Cinefanatics over on the YouTubes is where you can find a lot of our stuff. So
awesome. And I made it no secret, I'm a big fan of you guys. I think your content is excellent. So do go check out, subscribe to their channel, join their Patreon if you're so inclined. I like that Solid Slate says, the Wrath of Sully better be back next week, even though these guests are equally lovely. I'm fairly certain Sully will be back next week. And I also agree that these guests are equally lovely.
I have that on my resume. Equally lovely.
Yes. Dan?
Yes.
Where can people find you online? What do you have to promote? Also, speaking of Dan, if you don't follow me on Twitter, I posted a glorious trailer of a romance novel that Dan may or may not appear in. So do go check that out.
I forgot. Oh, that was a few days ago. Knowing how much you tweet is going to be.
Oh shit.
Oh, hey,
What?
that guy.
Oh
Whoa.
shit.
Interesting.
Huh.
We're having our own little Marvel cinematic.
Or
I
they're
don't
just
even know what to go into it.
quick, grab your Struckers.
Oh, wait, hold on. The PJCN EU. Got it.
Oh,
Juck Extended Universe.
that's more letters in the alphabet.
It's true. And we haven't repeated one yet. So anyone who's looking for me, I am often here on the Pajukin work schedule permitting. I will say I don't know if we'll go so far as to make an official announcement. If you are a patron and you listened to the Nice Guys commentary that Eric and I were on, you know what's happening and you know what's coming this coming Thursday. We will probably have an official announcement within the next couple of days, but I will say pay attention, be here, because Maxwell has a show Thursday night. There's going to be a show with Eric and I on Thursday night, and we're actually going to be doing a little bit earlier because, you know, God bless him, Eric lives on the East Coast and I live on the West Coast, so we're trying to make something go a little earlier because not everyone can be up till 10 o'clock at night to do everything, and Eric does have a 9-to-5 job. So be here at 5 p.m. PST, 8 p.m. for 8 p.m. EST for a show that's going to involve possibly 3 people on the screen, and then afterwards there's going to be a show involving that guy.
There's a lot of shows involving me on this network.
That's
and
true.
I apologize for that.
I don't.
sincerely.
I will take all the Maxwell I can get. That's why he's going to be on. He's going to be on my show and Eric and I's show on Thursday as well. So you'll see how that goes, and we'll have more information. Pay attention this week, Maxwell. So you're the intrepid leader today, and a more than adequate substitute for.
Thank you.
For the
Thank you,
PJ part of the Chuckin'. So
I mean, the reality is, even when
Gotcha.
he's here, I'm the leader, anyways.
well, I mean, you're a good number 2.
I love PJ, but he likes to.
Or number 1. Sorry.
He likes to not lead, so that's okay. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd Cinemaxwell, Instagram Cinemaxwell Inc. You can always find me on the PJ Campbell Network. We are off the next couple of days, although do watch Happy Hour with Jill and Molly tonight over on the Certain POV channel, and I do believe Chris Clark will be streaming on our Twitch later tonight with some Mario Party and some other fun stuff, so do check that out. Otherwise, we will see you back here Monday for our watch along of Misery. Thank you to all of you who watched. Thank you to our patrons. Have a lovely weekend, and as I always say, stay safe and wear your masks, please.
Please.
Have a great day, everybody.
Hasta la pasta.
We are an unusual couple, you know.
Oh, I don't think that was ever in question.
At last, at twilight.